so we can all hear when we're still in utero.
Oh, wow.
So sound is incredibly powerful and gets right in.
Hello, everyone. Hi, Katie.
Hello, Sophie.
I feel like we got a memo on some burgundy dark red.
Well, yes, I think we have an elegant theme going today. And also, I love color so much. And I was just remembering there's a quote attributed to Marc Chagall that colors are the friends of their neighbors and the lovers of their opposites.
Ooh, that's rich.
And so the whole playing with what colors do to our sense of play, our sense of satisfaction. So I'm loving that we both made choices that feel very rich and luxurious to me today.
It's funny that you went there because I, as you know, was very heavy. And as you probably know, black looks so good on heavy people. They look so less heavy. I mean, at 350 pounds, you look 350 pounds, no matter what color you wear. But for all these years, that is all I wore. Black, 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 black. Like my closet was black, lighter black, darker black, black. And now I cannot even wear like a sock that's black. It's just now that I've expressed my color self, it's just like black.
Yes, well, and also not your hiding self, because that's, part of what, the whole attitude toward women is you're never quite right.
Yes.
So, and, I think that's what keeps the whole industry going, so, that's not the right color in you, or that's not the right look, or the stripes are going the wrong way, or you should never wear stripes, or with your body, it's going to be difficult. And, so I think that most women, to have the idea of, I like what I'm wearing, I like the way it feels. For me, it's always about, first of all, can I move easily in it? So if it constricts me in any way, out. Yep. And then the second is, does it have a color that just makes me sort of swoon when I look at it? Because I often, when I'm out, I have people say, in fact, the other day I had someone say, looking at what you're wearing makes me so happy.
Oh.
And so to me, that's a gift also, that, that my creativity and our creativity can be expressed in this medium also, rather than just, do I look okay and will I be approved of?
Yeah. I was definitely raised by a mother who was like, never more than 2 patterns, ever.
Over. And mine was only one focal point.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So it's very, very, yes, all of the rules, and the great fun of throwing those out and then choosing ones that really work for you, that really work for me. So
I love that. Well, I was on the phone with someone this morning who had done a session with a practitioner of hers. And to the question, I wonder what I need to find and learn about myself, the practitioner said, well, this book just fell off the shelf, and I wonder if this book has something to teach you. And what was the book? Conscious Loving. And so I was like, well, tell me about that.
I love that. We actually that is not an uncommon experience. We have had several people say, I was in the bookstore and literally this book fell off the shelf. And so I love that, because, it lets me know that conscious loving still has its own action in the world. And it's going, hey, I'm here and I could be of value.
And so I, of course, as she was telling me, was wondering what was the situation she was working with. And she shared with me that she's really struggling with loving herself. And that as she had read the book in the past, to her, it was about relationships, but it also reflected of her own. But she never was able to really tap into, she always goes back to this like mother's voice that was very critical. And I thought we could talk about that, because that's really to change this inner dialogue that some people have. Like sometimes people are able to change their intellectual posture almost, they can think their way out of things. But I feel like voice can take a little bit of, sovereignty in there. So I was curious.
It's so interesting that you would say that too, because sound is your ears are the first to develop completely in utero. So we can all hear when we're still in utero.
Oh,
So
whoa.
sound is incredibly powerful and gets right in. So it doesn't surprise me that hearing a voice would be so hard to shift, because it seems like it's just part of your world because it's always been there. Hearing a voice in utero and then being able to separate out, oh, wait a minute, that's their voice and this is my voice.
Yes.
And that's a big deal for a lot of people to be able to discern that. The sound, it was interesting just experimenting with just recently with the sound So I just want to insert this before we talk about anything, that through an entire out breath, not a which would be like your mother going, you're going to wear that, but a through a whole out breath shifts you out of that critical brain. And it may only do it for a moment, but it genuinely works, and you can try it by and trying to talk to yourself in that voice. And you can't do it.
Yes, no,
so
no.
When you're it's a reset. It's just a very easy reset. And it's one that you may need to do lots and lots of times. But rather than arguing with myself about why I'm arguing with myself, I just go, and also let my body enjoy
Instantly your body started moving, I noticed.
Yeah. And then a new thought or just some space where I can be with myself without that rah, 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 yelling at me, gives me a chance to make a new choice. So I want everybody to know that, because it applies not only to relationships, but particularly to how we think of ourselves, our relationship with ourselves. And then I've never found anybody who could just love themselves. You say, well, all you need to do is just love yourself. Yeah, when you learn how to do that, everything else will work. But the how is so often missing. And the how that has been very, very reliable for Gay and me in teaching over many, many years is to think of someone or some place that you love. So like someone, and how you love them is you can be yourself. You feel relaxed. You might even feel a sense of being cared for, or there's a sense of spaciousness or warmth. There's a physical experience of being loved. And you think of them or that place until you're having the experience of loving, and then you give it to yourself. Like you can let it wash over you, or you can let it hug you. Touch is very, very important, because it will do something also to shift that sound that you hear and the sense of being all by yourself. So when you're touching, you go, oh, here I am. And it's actually possible for me to be with myself just as I am. So for me, that's really loving. I don't have to wait till I've lost the weight, or I've earned more money, or someone says something nice to me, or I have my whole life planned out, and then I can love myself. But right now, without changing, can you love yourself for even just a moment? And that changes things. So when I'm loving myself, the first thing is, am I willing to be with myself? And I find that touching, particularly touching, and especially if I'm thinking of somebody that I love, or a place that I love to go, like there's a place on the beach that when I'm there, I just feel whole, and here I am, and everything is okay. And even if it's just for that moment, the new picture and the new sensory experience interrupts that so many of us live in. And I think particularly women, that we just live in a critical world. And, like, what are you, all of that. But a moment of loving yourself in that sensory way is something that you can then come home to again and again. Remembering with the and the thinking of somebody that you love and giving that to yourself, I have found that it gradually sort of dissolves all of the armoring and the, and the prickliness that we usually aim at ourselves.
It's interesting because when you said the hearing is the one thing the ears, develop the soonest, it's interesting because then as the fetus is developing, they would hear what the mother is saying to themselves, not just what is being said to them when they're born, but also the language that the mother's using with themselves. That's what
Yes.
the baby would be hearing, right?
Yes, and the tones, particularly the tones and the because babies' ears are geared to hear higher tones because they're geared to hear their mother, but they can hear, sort of what's going on in the environment. And so there are some wonderful experiments, like people have played music, certain kinds of music while babies are in the womb, and then that's music that they can then go to sleep to. So there's definitely a connection between the environment, the sound environment, and then the sounds that we continue to hear in our own heads. And most people don't even question that because it's, the water that you swim in. So, but making a shift in that, I realized that there was a point where it was after I'd been meditating for some years too, that I realized that I was not defaulting to critical thoughts about myself, that I could default to, or, or I feel happy. There was this kind of uprising with that would just come for no good reason. There would be this, oh, I feel happy. And then that began to take up more space than the, oh, you messed up again, and you're never going to be any good, or all of those critical and competitive thoughts that, most people think that's just the way it is.
It doesn't have to be. You're right. I was interested many years ago about writing this book. I had the beginning of a title which had something to do with like, guess who's coming for dinner, a different kind of that. But like to really realize that there is a bunch of people inside me. There is the loving this and the critical that. And then there's the one who tells me not to jump from the roof, which is a proper fear. The proper use of fear is to say, don't run the red light,
Right. Protect yourself. Don't do something dangerous.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so those are good. But I just remember this sense of like having this like table, where just who would I choose to interact with inside of my own world? And boy, was there activity in there. It was just busy.
Yes, I love the image of the table.
Yeah.
Because what you're talking about is what I call personas. The different roles that you've learned to wear. Because what we're talking about of loving yourself, that's really what we're talking about, essence. That just the core you. But even the core you, we have said that even no matter how adorable you are, no matter how gorgeous you are, your being, at some time, your being is going to become inconvenient for your caretakers. And so just being isn't enough, to get attention, to keep getting attention, which we need, as much as food and water. So people develop doings, and doings are personas. The roles that you learn to wear, both to get attention, but also to avoid getting the wrong kind of attention. So we develop, like I had a super competent, a little know-it-all, a super responsible, a total klutz. I just have a whole bunch of personas, but there were ones that I really relied on, like my super responsible one, to get attention, because it's like, we say that when you're born, you come into a party that's already been going on. So the party already started. They didn't wait for you. And some of the party hats were also taken. So you only had the choice of the party hats that were still available, in your family or in your environment. And so you pick the one that you think is going to work. And if it works, you hold on to it and you keep using it. So part of learning to love yourself, I think, is to go, oh, I'm acting in this way, but that's different from who I am. I make these different choices, but my core, me, is lovable just the way I am. And I make these different choices and I act in these different ways, but the core me is totally lovable. And for a lot of people, that's really hard to even say.
Well, because
because if
it sounds unfamiliar, right? Like if you were not spoken to that way, like someone talks to you that way and you're like, whoa, that must be not true. I don't deserve to be, like it probably sounds really unfamiliar.
and I think it can also be scary, like, the world doesn't work that way. That's ridiculous. So I think people poo-poo that because they've not ever heard, kind of gentleness or kindness, because a lot of people have come in, well, life is hard and we're going to just toughen you up so that you're going to be able to handle it. And people translate that into, there must be something wrong with me, that if I just keep trying and I keep trying to fit into the roles that are available, then someday somebody out there will tell me I'm lovable. And if you depend on that one, you're really at the effect of other people's moods, how they're feeling about themselves. And you don't realize that you can be the source of your own loving. You can be the source of your own approval. And that's a big step for a lot of people.
That's funny that you're talking about that because a couple of days ago I was with my guy and he definitely was in a mood. He was definitely something had happened that didn't, whatever. He was in a mood. And I was not. I was super joyful and I was
right.
absolutely like bubbly and happy. And I could see the tendency, like I could see myself being like, oh, maybe I should go down there with him. But I kind of didn't. And I was like, oh, my love, I could see that somehow something happened this morning that wasn't so happy, but I'm feeling great. So I'll be over there. I just totally mapped it out. And you know what? It got him out of his mood. It totally, but not because I tried. It was just a sweet moment of like, I could see what's happening here, but I'm not going there.
Yes, that kind of osmosis.
Yeah.
And you're also pointing to one of the big things that I see in relationship is, can I feel happy if my partner's upset? Can I be in a different state and still be with them, but enjoy my state rather than slipping over or feeling that I have to kind of diminish myself so we're at the same vibration? And, we hear that a lot between people of, well, I should just, tone it down a little bit because I'm making him feel bad, or they're making me feel bad. And the learning how to be in your own wholeness and allow the other person to have their own experience and still be connected, that's quite a trick. For most people, they think they need to be kind of experiencing the same feeling in order to be connected. But what you were describing is that you helped him shift.
I did, but it wasn't like, oh, it's my job to fix it.
Right.
It wasn't like attempting to be in the same space. It was more like maybe waking, like almost like I snapped him, like he realized how much he was in a mood, maybe from noticing mine, but I wasn't on a hero journey to like get him out of it. That really is freedom for me, because in the past I would have been a version of, and I don't know if it is, can I be happy when he's not? I think it would have been more, do I deserve to live in my happiness when someone isn't? Like, do I have that right? Like, should I be in the mood? Like almost kind of be not deserving of that space. I didn't feel any of this, nor did I feel like I needed to particularly uplift him. I was more, I think my joy became somewhat contagious, is what.
Yes, your joy became contagious. We forget that joy and happiness is also contagious. We think of fear and anger as being contagious, but we give a lot of attention to them. But you were just percolating along in your happiness, and it bubbled on over into him in a way that you didn't have to make any effort. You didn't have to, work on it, or also be the one who is sort of working on him. So that's really something worth celebrating. That
was definitely, and as you're saying that, I realized you were one of the first one, maybe the first one, to really bring up this hero. I want to talk about this hero thing that people do, that we call hero somewhat jokingly, but a lot of people think that helping others and getting them out of their whatever is kind of our role. It's our job.
That's our role. And that's what friends do. That's what mates do. That's what partners do, is they hero each other. And I think it's really important. The whole thing about the hero is something that's very interesting to me. And I have looked at it for lots of years, because the hero helps without being asked.
Oh,
It's like somebody coming into your kitchen. You're in the middle of, someone comes in to visit, and then they come in and they take over your kitchen and say, oh, well, this should go over here and this should go here. And, oh, I can do this better, without, and you haven't asked for any help. And the heroes always think that, well, I can help. I can fix this. And it takes over the space. And so the other person can either get mad at you, which is the villain move, or feel like the victim. Oh, I really can't do anything myself. I need to rely on other people. So it's a very disempowering, but it's very popular. The hero move is very popular.
It's funny because as you said that, I was imagining, I mean, I've heard you speak of it, so I was aware of that, but I was also hearing that some people may think that it's a good thing. You mean, oh, helping others without being asked is like it's like the end all be all of like being helpful. It's like, I didn't even need to be asked. I guessed what the person needed. And no.
Right, I read their minds, which is another thing in relationships that people go, wait a minute, you're supposed to know what I want and what I'm needing because you're supposed to be able to read my mind. So that whole issue is it's really a big one in all kinds of relationships, not just romantic relationships. So business relationships, if you imagine that, somebody's the hero, in an organization, then other people can just slack off taking responsibility for what they're choosing or their own accountability for, for the assignment and what they're going to do and others are going to do. But what it also really does is keep you from having to negotiate with, here's what I want. What do you want? And it keeps you from actually making and keeping an agreement because the hero will get in there and do it instead of saying, well, hey, wasn't that something you were going to fix by 5 today? And the other person, well, yes, but I knew that you would come in and fix it.
That is dysfunctional right there. Because what you end up creating, I just realized yesterday I had a conversation with someone who was telling me that because it's a business partnership and they don't actually trust their person is going to do the stuff. So very discreetly, but they take it over so that it gets done. And I was like, woo, what is he, 3? Like,
right, exactly. What is he, 3? Yeah. Yes, but that is what the hero tends to make other people feel that they're incapable. That's what my I had a super competent meltdown about 10 years ago where my super competent just couldn't do it anymore. Oh. And it just sort of melted down. But it was a really good thing because I realized that in order for me to be a super competent, other people had to be incompetent. Yeah. So whenever I would show up, people would start messing up. They'd be doing fine until I came into the interaction and then everything would start to malfunction. And so when I really allowed my super competent to melt down. And I also was just realizing, as we were talking about loving ourselves, that was a main way that I felt that I was lovable.
Oh, to be helpful to others.
To be helpful. It's substituted for me loving myself, that getting someone saying thank you or, oh, that really helped me out. Or even saying, even getting, huffy about it. Like, well, I was in the middle of that and I could have completed that. Well, then I could go into, but I could have completed it better. So, so it fed my feeling less than, and then better than, less than, and better than. And that play goes on between so many people rather than I'm wholly responsible for my choices and you are also. And when I say I'm going to do something, I do it. And if I'm not going to be able to do it, I negotiate it with you. Mm-hmm. The whole skill of agreements really takes the place of somebody having to be the hero.
It's funny because we started with loving ourselves. That was the beginning of our conversation. And now we're mentioning this hero, which could look like they're very loving people, but I see very much what you're describing, that they really are taking over and that somehow they're replacing their own inner love with this move. But you also mentioned the villain and you mentioned the victim. So so if none of those stances are a healthy stance, let's just say, what is a healthy, like I like to be a helpful friend, not a hero one. So what is the distinction there?
Well, the biggest distinction is that you ask. So I have a suggestion. Would you like to hear about it?
Oh.
I've been noticing a dynamic going on in the team, and I'd like to explore it. Is that something that you'd like to do? Or I realized that we had an agreement, that I was going to bring the report today, and I left my house without it. And so I feel sad that I do that, and I feel a little embarrassed that I do that, but I need to renegotiate our agreement. So it all has to do with my claiming what I'm doing and wondering about the interaction, and also giving you credit for really being an equal partner. And if the other person says, if I say, for example, I have a suggestion, would you like to hear it? And the other person says anything other than a clear yes or no, I take it as a no. Because they might say, oh, yeah, I think I've got it. And I'll go, okay, great, you've got it. And so we've found that you can either, learn from wisdom or learn from experience. And there are some things that I'd much rather learn from wisdom, like, how has this worked before for other people? And what's something that I could learn so that I could do this more effectively? So I'm learning from wisdom rather than completely messing it up and then having to redo it and apologize to everybody, or, feel bad about myself, or all of that, as a substitute for actually just saying, here's what I did. Here's what I'd like us to do. Is that something that you would like to do? So that we're actually collaborating rather than having that one over, one under kind of interaction.
That's really, really helpful. This just simple question of like, I have a suggestion, or I'm seeing something. Would you like to know what that is? And truly trusting that people would tell you. And you're right. If it's not a full on, yes, I'd love to hear it. Like, help me out, to treat it, because some people will be like, all right, yeah, sure. Why don't you?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, sure. But sure is not a yes.
No. I really love the idea of that distinction. As we're wrapping up, I'm curious, like, if someone is in a hero type of dynamic, especially as a replacement for, inner love of themselves, I'm curious, like, asking that question, that's a really good one. What else can one do if they really are hooked, almost addicted, right? Almost addicted to this, helping others as like their way of giving themselves worth? What can someone do?
Well, one of the things that was just occurring to me is I've played with this in seminars, is I have people exaggerate being the hero, like, Mickey Mouse with the cape on, dun, 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 or holding up the world. I can hold the world. I can handle it. And then just noticing what that feels like. To be holding up the world, to be dun da dun dun da dun. And if I even do that for a minute or so, I realize, oh my gosh, It's exhausting. And so then I can go, is there an easier way to be in the world than to I was just thinking of that. I had a script coming in with that. I was supposed to save the world. So a big hero script. I mean, that's the essence of, I gotcha, I'm going to hold up to the world. But then I realized I can't. I just can't. And then I went through the sadness of, I really want to, but I just can't. And then, well, what can I do?
Oh, yeah.
What can I do? What kind of choices can I make that also would be enjoyable for me? So the whole other aspect of that is, am I operating from my own genius? And that's a whole other conversation. But the question would be, is this something that I want to do? Or is it coming from any kind of obligation? And that'll help to sort it out, to kind of begin to throw off the hero cape.
I love that. Like, is it something I'm doing out of obligation? I want to meditate on that one. That's really good. Thank you for this conversation. That was so, so, so delicious. Thank you, Katie.
Oh, thank you. And thank you always for delicious conversations.